to you also.
There's smoke in the bedroom.
Okay. Well, there you go. I have a very
What was
talkative-
that?
That means you're either having a fire or someone's cooking in the kitchen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It says danger. The fire alarm is going off. The fire alarm will be loud. That's what it says.
Oh, I hope it doesn't go off.
Tami,
okay.
When we grew up, okay, just want to say, when we grew up, the only way you knew the house was on fire if there was smoke. Like,
Yes, you would smell smoke and you would leave promptly. So, yes. Okay. So I'm making you co-host because I just got to notice that my internet was unstable. So we have all kinds of things going on. So we'll see.
I'm very stable.
Here's your first question. I put it in the answer. We are together for 8 years and I thought happily married, but all the years with me and many years before, my husband went to prostitutes regularly, up to a few times a month, and says he never felt bad about doing so since sex cannot be bad. I found out 3 months ago because of STIs. He is in recovery with a therapist and groups, no sponsor for 10 weeks now, with little changes in him. So far, all he did was admit he is an addict and in abstinence for 3 months or so, he says. I agree with that. No full disclosure yet. I have a great therapist as well. My question is, I have never had to deal with infidelity in my previous relationships. Now, if I choose to stay in this relationship because unfortunately I still love him and feel attached to him, how should I deal with, and he always knew, my most important core value, a deal breaker for me, faithfulness, being broken hundreds of times. Staying, I have to stop over, staying, I have to step over my core value if I will ever learn to cope with knowing what he did and hope he will never betray me again. He says he also doesn't understand why and how I want to stay and try to with him, although he wants to save our relationship. I don't even think he ever loved me. That's a lot, but there's so many pieces to break down.
Well, I just want to mention the part about my most important call, my most important core value, because values change, or they can adapt. Or let me just not say that. Values don't change, but how they're executed can change. For example, one of my deep values is honesty. It doesn't mean that someone might be dishonest. It just means it's something we're really going to have to talk about and deal with. So there's a difference, I think, between core values and a bottom line. You know, core value is a general belief system. I'm not trying to be like philosophical. It's just a core value is, to me, a core value is your honesty. You know, you're like that kind of thing. Whereas behavior can be different than a core value, especially in addicts, by the way, because I can have very intact core values, but if I'm chasing some drug, that's all I care about. Or if I'm chasing sex, that's all I care about. But to your point, I mean, I think it's time to re-examine, is this still a core value for me? There is no black or white here. Like, if you think this, you should do that. What is important is this person working on themselves? Are they really, you know, I don't know how you would recognize that they're getting better, because hopefully he's just running to meetings and getting support and sort of in his own head in a whirl. So I don't know that you would know whether he was being honest or not about recovery. But yeah, there's that thing about my core value. If I learn to coping, he will betray you again. There's no doubt about it. Sex addicts, and I know everyone hates it every time I say this, sex addicts never get it perfectly the first time. So he may return to porn, he may return to a sex worker. There may be slips, just there are with food or gambling or gaming. So if your value is honesty rather than monogamy, that might be really helpful in a situation like this, because what we can move toward is being completely honest with you, letting you know everything that's going on with us, if we're struggling or we're not, knowing that we may have consequences. To me, the higher value is this person working toward integrity? Are they working toward honesty? Those are values that are much more important to me than if someone goes out and, you know, does something with some stranger. I mean, I'd prefer they didn't, but the much greater value is, are they going toward the values that I believe we should both share? There's another piece about STIs, which I wanted to mention. In case you guys don't know, those are sexually transmitted diseases. Where was that up there? Oh, I found out 3 months ago because I got an STI. So talk about bottom lines being crossed. forget that he had sex with someone else. He violated your body. And he didn't even think, which is very true for my clients, addicts do what they do, but it didn't occur to him that having sex with someone else and then having sex with you might give you a disease. What he's thinking about is, I don't want to get caught, and I'm certainly not going to tell her, and besides, nothing would ever happen because it never has. And he's not thinking about you at all. And now he's in serious trouble. So anyway, Tami, there's so much here. I didn't actually hear a full question. What are your thoughts?
Well, and she says he's working with a therapist, and hopefully it's a therapist that specializes in this, because this is very different work. Dr. Rob has shared, behavioral issues require behavioral therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy, accountability. Does he have a 3-circle plan? So he doesn't have a sponsor. That's a little, I'd be a little concerned, but if he has filtering on his phone and it's going to its therapist, maybe okay. Not to you. But I really agree with what you were talking about with core values. And yes, he was betraying you before you ever said I do, so he stood there and said, I will be, whatever the vows are that you chose. But, he lied at that moment, knowing that he had already been unfaithful and he was going to do it again. And that's addiction. So you love a broken person. If you haven't already done so, Dr. Rob wrote a great book, Codependence, Moving Beyond Codependency. This isn't your fault. There's nothing you could do or not do that was going to make him change. But loving someone who is broken doesn't mean that you have to, that there's something wrong with you, or that you have to, completely compromise. But you do need to figure out what really is your important values and situations, and what is right for you, regardless of what other people say. There will be people that go, leave the bum, he's terrible, he's, and then, but you understand that he's this amazing guy, except for this stuff and his dishonesty with you. So, and the STIs and the betrayal of finding out, and the discovery of that, that is very challenging. And you're not alone. The Betray Partner groups that I was talking about at the beginning, this is stuff that we talk about. So please join those. So, okay, next question is popping up in the, sorry,
I got this.
Okay.
If you want. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Okay. So do you think having an SLAA sponsor is necessary for recovery, or do you think doing the 12 steps in your own can be successful?
Yeah, I don't think that this is a process that we do all alone. And there's a saying for us in recovery, which is, my own best thinking got me here. So if you could do this alone, then you wouldn't be in the situation that you're in. And also, I believe that sponsors are not just good for kind of doing this or fixing this. To me, they are role models. They provide support and in an active way while I am struggling with something. It's someone to call. It's someone who will reach out to me. It's someone I can learn from. And hopefully that person who sponsors me, if I'm married in a monogamous relationship, and if they are married in a monogamous relationship, and they're doing really well and it's much improved, and you're just got screwed up your monogamous relationship, a sponsor may help guide you into finding peace in your relationship, just like they did with theirs. So I think it's about being a role model. I think it's about being a support and a guide. And I don't think that we are particularly good at thinking well in this area. I mean, I can really buy a car. I'm really good at that. But deciding whether or not to have sex with a stranger, my mind often gives me the wrong answer. And that's when I need to call someone up and say, you know what? I feel like having sex with a stranger today. What do you think? And usually they'll say, not a great idea. And that's what sponsors are for. Because I can convince myself that anything is a good idea if I work hard enough.
Well,
Tami,
even going
else?
back to buying a car or whatever, like if I'm looking to do something to soothe myself, like checking in with my sponsor might be a really good choice before I go make a major purchase, or before I go eat that whole chocolate cake, or whatever it is that I want to do that will help numb me out and take me away from that. So, but yeah, you will miss out if you, first of all, you can't just read a book and magically be different. That like, even Dr. Rob's great books, like they don't magically, you know, reading Sex Addiction 101, you aren't going to go, oh, now I get it. Now I won't do any of those things again. That's not how it works. We have to learn, and having people alongside of us, mentoring us, giving us hope that there is hope to change, you know, is so meaningful, because otherwise the shame of like, oh, I can't figure this out. I mean, it just is spiraling. So I would invite you to embrace what the 12 steps are, which is a community of people like yourself that want to do things differently. It's very freeing to be able to connect with that.
And I wanted to add something. If I wanted to learn something, I could read a book. But if I wanted to learn faster, I'd probably go to a class where I could learn from that person and hear other people interacting and have the right book. And, you know, I think it's kind of like you can work on this by yourself, but I don't think you're going to get the full knowledge of what you need without the engagement of everybody else and having a guide, which is what the sponsor is. Anyway, Tami, thanks. That's a good answer.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing on that. I mean, because it's so easy for us to be in denial and lie to ourselves. So we can go, well, we don't need that part, or we can skip that. And so to have the accountability, you know, of like, what step are you on? Where are you at? Like, it just, the accountability and the guide is valuable. So, okay, next question. My partner just returned from SILA and has broken several boundaries, is still sober, and has gaslighted me about breaking those boundaries. Is it common for addicts returning from inpatient programs to be worse than when they went?
Yes and no. I think everyone comes back from treatment feeling like they're riding on a white cloud and they got this. And oftentimes when people are seeking integrity, they'll talk to you spouses and they'll sound really different. And because they're in the middle of working on it, they've got a lot of support. But going back home from that place, it's very hard to not be, you're kind of like grabbing for something to hold on to because you've been held on to for a while. And if you don't immediately invest deeply in supportive relationships and recovery and sponsorship and going to lots of meetings, maybe therapy a few times a week, like you've got to, addicts have to find something to take the place of residential treatment. We create, like we take you to the mountain, but we don't teach you how to live there or how to get there. We just take you there. You have to get on a path and get yourself there. And so like that, we showed your partner, I'm sure, what they need to do, how they need to do it, where they need to do it, what they need to think, how to be aware of getting in trouble and what to do. You know, this is what we, and where it comes from and why they're like this. And they don't leave without all that. But what we can't do is motivate them to do the right things when they get home, you know, and so does treatment work? It works for people who take it inside of themselves and then carry it and live it out in the world. But treatment is just like what Tami said about recovery, like reading a book. If you consider reading a book, you know, getting well, it isn't reading the book, it's the practice of how you live. And if you go to treatment like you're learning something and it's really great and you have a feel-good experience, that's nice. I think you should go to Disneyland, it's cheaper, but if you don't make it your life, I mean, Tami said this earlier, but I want to really reinforce, recovering from addiction is not about stopping. I mean, that's the smallest part. It's about learning a whole different way of living. You know, I learned to live by getting anything I could and convincing anyone of everything I was trying to get, whether it was true or not, and lying as much as I could to get what I wanted all the time. Now I can stop having sex with strangers, but it doesn't fix all of that stuff. Learning to be a good human being takes a lot of practice and a lot of hard work. So I can't promise you that someone who goes to treatment is going to get better or going to bring it in their lives the way they need to go forward and get help. Sometimes it means they need more treatment. We have a 4-week program. Sometimes we ask people to stay longer than 2 or 3. They can come less, but sometimes we say to them, you know, you really need to stay longer, or boy, you're really struggling, or you and your spouse, and they don't listen. And that's fine. But some people, you know, bottom line is we're sitting here saying, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. And that's because we're like a cancer doctor, you know, do this medication, don't come to the clinic 3 times or whatever it is. And you'll get better if you do those things and embrace them. And if you don't, give a phone call, we'll give you more things to do. But what people do with what they learn when they go home is up to them. And And then there are folks, Tami, right, who just go to treatment because they want you to feel better and they want to excuse themselves to you, and they want to be able to come home and say, no, I really worked hard in treatment and I went to just to make you happy, or whatever they say. And but they never really got what they came for. I don't know, Tami, I didn't mention when we don't do a good enough job or when we let them down. I mean, I just wonder, because it doesn't really occur to me. I think we can do a lot with people who are motivated and we can't do a lot with people who aren't. But what are your thoughts about all this?
Well, my thought was, is your partner watching this too? Is your partner sitting there, on this? What is your partner doing? You guys, as long as releases were signed, because that doesn't always happen, but as long as releases are signed, then there's a meeting with the two of you so that you understand what the recommended aftercare plan is. Is your partner following that? Our clinical director says, tell the truth and tell it faster. That isn't just about the acting out. It's about everything. And so like those things are all reinforced, but Dr. Rob is right. Some people, some people refuse. We unfortunately have some people that don't graduate. They don't complete successfully treatment. So we're not going to rubber stamp and go, oh yeah, you did a good job, when they didn't. So they're given the tools, but like everything else, if the tool is laying there on the floor, it's not going to, nothing's going to happen with it. So, but I'm going to say the flip side of it. I can't tell you how many partners and spouses that I have reached out to. One a while back had said, I know it's early. I know it's really early. Like he had just gotten out within the last couple of weeks, but she said, I see he's trying. I see he's different. It's awkward. I said, I believe it. This is all different for him. But she said, it gives me hope. I don't trust it completely. I said, you shouldn't, but she could see that he had made progress. I just did an email with a bunch of the alumni. The stories I got back from a bunch of them, I was almost weeping. It was just like so powerful to see how people's lives can change if they want it. Recovery is, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, that's what recovery is. And there's also a phrase in the big book, half measures availed us nothing. And so it's one of those where somebody that comes in and does, pardon my language, half-assed in treatment, is, you get what you put into it. So I'm sorry for you, but yeah, go ahead.
Tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. our time, I think that's right.
No, 10 a.m. 10
a.m. our time.
Pacific time.
I am running, tomorrow at 10 a.m. our time, Pacific time, I am running the alumni group. And if you want to come to alumni group, I don't know who you are, but I will discuss this with you and we can have a conversation about what's working and what isn't, which will be helpful. We get sometimes 35 or 40 people who've been through treatment and they're sitting there with me or one of the other therapists asking for help. I just got home 3 weeks ago and I'm not sure what to do about this, or, I've been home 3 months and my spouse and I just got into that, or that's what this is for. That's why, we volunteer our time to support you guys because you have been through and you have come to us for help, and we don't take that lightly, and we do continue to be supportive to you. So there are alumni groups, there's this group, there's a million ways that this person could tie back into us, all the stuff that's online. One of the reasons we run our programs the way we do is so people can get help at the beginning with podcasts and support groups. They can get help in treatment if they're coming to us or somewhere else, and they can get help after treatment with us because we don't leave people once they're gone. So I'd be really curious, has he been going to alumni groups? Has he been checking in with people he went through treatment with? Because people who do that together often get each other's phone numbers and email and checked in with each other aside from our alumni groups. We are here to help. If this person wanted to say, hey, this isn't working out for me, I went to Seeking Integrity, I'm really struggling, maybe I didn't understand this or that, what can I do? We are here. He knows the name of his primary therapist. He can write Tami and say, hey, can I talk to Mary for 15 minutes? We'll make that happen. So just the fact that I or Tami have not heard from this person tells me that there's a lot more that he could be doing other than spouting, I got 3 months and, I hope it's okay with you or whatever you say. Anyway, that was a lot, Tami, but I feel very proud of all that work, So
there is no more. I am part of Seeking Integrity. I don't say things that I don't believe to be true. There is no more expert clinical team to work with clients. You know, we have a small group of clients, you, Dr. David, and 3 master's level professionals working with no more than 8 guys at a time. Like where else are you going to get that? And with your level of expertise. So anybody, no, I say this. So
No,
anybody who is wanting help, I always want everybody to have the best chance at help. So just so you know, if you are throwing things in the chat, we aren't going to get to it. We've got 14 questions unanswered so we got to get going. But so
let's move.
Questions in the chat. I've been married for 33 years. A few years ago, I became addicted to porn and replaced sex with my wife with porn. I also told her that since her breast reduction, I am not as attracted to her. Now that we are trying to reconcile and try to have sex life again, I can't maintain an erection during sex. There is also no sexual chemistry between us. Now that I am not looking at porn, is this reciting problem related to the excess porn use, and how can she get past the things said to her to have chemistry?
Well, that's a lot.
It is.
I have my typical standard line about this, and I'd like to use this because I think it works. And then Tami, if you want to fill in, I'd appreciate it. A long time ago, a friend of mine, first of all, almost all sex addicts, when they stop their behavior, struggle with intimate sexuality. You know, if we didn't have sexual problems, we would be, and we act out, which spouses will say, how could you love me if you acted out? It's almost not a sexual act for us. It's really about disappearing into some fantasy of something. It is sexual because it's pleasurable, but it doesn't really connect emotionally for us. The challenge is when we get to turning to the people who love and care about us. Sex is scary, sex is challenging, sex is something we tend to avoid. And that has nothing to do with you really either. It has to do with our own fears and anxieties. I think this is a really good way of looking at it for addicts in particular, and I hope your spouse is listening. Or if not, I think we have these recorded somewhere. Tami will probably tell us where. But in any case, as an addict, I became interested in sex when I saw hot, exciting, intense experiences in front of me. As an addict, what turned me on was anonymous sex, sex with strangers, looking at porn, strip clubs. That is what turned me on. And you have to understand, when you're moving into being excited by some kind of intense experience like that, addicts are getting aroused by what they're seeing, what they're into, what they're doing, what the next picture is going to look like, or who is in that other room. I mean, we're excited by being in it and really in the moment of looking and touching. And that's a very different kind of excitement than lying with someone that you've been with for 33 years. First of all, you've seen that butt before, you've seen those arms before, and we love our partners, but you know, they're never going to stimulate us in the way that those images do, or those experiences. But you know what? They're not meant to, because if you're in healthy recovery, sex with your partner comes from a completely different emotional space. I don't know how to say that without being woo-woo. It just comes from different neurochemistry, different internal experience, things that we're not used to: safety, trust, connection, things. You know, when you're a sex addict, that's not what you're looking for sex. You're looking for this butt or that body or that situation. So a colleague of mine used this phrase and I've never forgotten. He said, sex addicts in recovery need to move towards sex with their partners and people they love from a place of willingness and not a place of horniness. As a sex addict, I'm looking to get really excited about whatever I'm into and jump into that with my heart pounding. But as a partner, maybe I hold your hand and then we get some oil and we massage each other, and then we take a bath and I wash your hair, and then, oh, I get aroused. I didn't know that was going to happen. And then we have sex and it's a wonderful thing. But I don't do well going to my partner and trying to get intensely aroused by them in the way that I would a sex worker or porn. It's a whole different thing. And I think sexuality in partners has to be built through small connections, hand holding, kissing, massaging, hold, and that leads to arousal. When we're acting out, the intensity of what we're doing leads to immediate arousal. And maybe that's another thing about not getting erections. You're not going to get erections in the immediate, intense way that you did looking at porn or being with strangers. It's going to come it's going to happen if it happens, out of what you're doing with that person. And it may not happen the first moment you lie together, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So all of that being said, I'm tossing tossing it to you.
Yeah, and I'm I'm sitting here thinking, my husband and I have been married approximately that time. And if he came to me and told me he was not attracted to me because I had a breast reduction, I would be so devastated. So I can only imagine how traumatic those words were for your wife. I hope she has gotten support and help for her to know that it isn't a body shaming thing, that it sounds like she was taking care of herself for whatever reason she needed to do so, and that your sex addiction, your porn, is not about her or her body, but it's really hard, especially as we age, to feel good about ourselves, especially when somebody's being quite blatant about that.
Right.
So what Dr. Rob said, if she's willing, I guess that would be the first place to start, is if she's even willing to step into that space and trust that you can be a safe person for her. But we talk about sensate focused, where it's non-sexual touch and things, and starting from a dating perspective, like, can you go for a walk in the park together? Can you start with safe things that have no goal of sex, because I think that there's been a lot of damage to the relationship that has nothing to do with sex too. So that was my thought.
And this, Tammy, you're absolutely right, because this text is rife with the word sex. Addicted to porn, replaced sex, porn, breast reduction, not attracted, trying to have a sex life, can't maintain erections, no sexual chemistry, not looking at porn. I'm pulling out the sex words, and I'm thinking that this person is focused on the wrong thing. Like, what they need to focus on is building an intimate relationship with their partner. And you know what? If you're married 3 years, you don't have to have sex today or tomorrow or next week. I know this. I'm older too. And if, sex addicts are driven by sex. What if for me, it'd be interesting if your note was all about, I'd like to get closer to her. I'd like us to know each other again. I'd like to see what we still have fun with together. And, and I'm looking forward to some physical, intimate time with her, holding and kissing, whether or not that leads to sex. Tammy, this reminds me of when we look at what sexual sobriety is for sex addicts. And, they start saying, well, I can't, what am I going to do? I'm not going to have sex, or I'm not going to have the sex that I used to have. And I think, well, life's about, I don't know about you, but my marriage, I think about 5 to 8 to 10%, maybe, if that 5% is about sex, and 95% is about everything else, which leads to sex, by the way. So to me, this reads like a fairly active or recently recovering sex addict who's still looking for their solutions in having great sex and being intensely excited. Only now they want to move that solution onto their spouse. And, to me, it's a little bit like masturbating into someone. It's not like you really want to have a relationship with her. You want her breath and her body to be the way you would want it to be, so you would get turned on. There's a little too much you in all of that.
So I'm going to recommend the Porn Addiction 101 Level 1 that starts September 18th. You'll find that on Seeking Integrity under online workshops and lectures. And that is a 6-week course, 90 minutes each. And I think you would understand what your relapse prevention plan is, how to stop. I think you'd have a lot of information and insights that would be very useful to possibly being able to build a relationship. I will give a little teaser too. This is also one of the Out of the Doghouse. We're going to have a work group for that. It will be announced at some point. But we're working on a work group for Out of the Doghouse. So stay tuned, but that comes to mind for you as well. So I'm glad you're here. Please, no, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're asking questions. Okay, next question. Go ahead.
One more thing, Tammy. I think you're one of the best people at talking about events. And you're such a great events person. But I want to say in a larger way what we're trying to do, which is that not everyone can afford to go to treatment. Not everyone can afford or has the ability to go to therapy every week, 50 weeks a year. So part of what, and many people go to therapy and don't get the educational or activity-based pieces that they need to do, the active pieces in recovery. So the reason that we're running these courses for porn addicts, for sex addicts, for couples, is to be able to allow you guys to get the stuff you need that you may not get in your world. And there are a lot of clients who say, well, I'm in therapy, and then I took this course and I learned all the stuff I needed to know to support the therapy. So, you know, when we go to sell or talk about these things, again, it's because we really know what does help people, and getting all of that intellectual information, plus having your spouse say, oh, you're in that Thursday night course, can be really helpful too. So anyway, Tami, I'm just reinforcing what you say. It's not just to, you know, sell something at all. It's because
No,
we
and
really,
it isn't. I really see these as resources. And if I have the best resources and never tell anybody about them, they're not doing you any good. So you can sign up for them or not. I mean, it really is. I'm just telling you there are options, and there's more than you can imagine. And coming to this, as great as Dr. Rob is, this isn't enough. Going to see a therapist, even the best qualified therapist, isn't enough. It's like all this stuff. So how do you put together what's going to be useful for you, that's going to help support you in recovery and help you build relationships in a healthy way? Not like the person that, you know, mentioned earlier that, you know, he's still gaslighting me. Well, that doesn't help. So more is good. And all of the alumni can join those work groups too. We've had a number of them who have done that. And it's not like, oh, I've already done that. No. Do you know how many first step meetings I've been in over the decades? Doesn't matter. It's still good information for me. We can never overhear this stuff. So anyway, okay. So curious to know who might be expected. Oh, what might be expected out of a sex and porn addict 23 months into recovery? Thanks. With a CSAT. So this person is working with a CSAT, which is a certified sex addiction therapist. That would be someone who has the education to work with someone with sex addiction. So
why don't you try? I mean, I because it's such a broad question, I think it gives us a lot of opportunities to say all kinds of things. So why don't you give it a shot, and I'll go next.
So so kind of like I was just saying, if that's all they're doing, you won't see a lot, probably. Hopefully you'll see some changes, but if they're only going to a qualified therapist for 50 minutes once a week, it's really challenging when addiction is 24/7. So the rest of my question for you would be, okay, they're working with a CSAT. What else are they doing? How many meetings a week are they going to? Are they on this webinar tonight? Are they doing the drop-in groups on sexandrelationshiphealing.com? Have they done the work groups? What are they doing to support their recovery? Because even the most gifted therapist, 50 minutes once a week, and that's all they're doing, I would not expect to see much. Now, somebody who's really in recovery, 23 months in, that's almost, ready to pick up a 2-year chip at meetings. If they're actively doing that, that's where I would call recovery. You will see them, showing up. Dr. Rob wrote Out of the Doghouse book. You would see them becoming trustworthy. You would see them actively, in conversation with you, looking to what's best for the relationship, not just what's best for me. So recovery is this process where we live differently, with the lens not just focused on me, but like on the broader things. With a 3-circle plan, you'd be looking at what's in that healthy outer circle, and it would be things like, that are joyful and not just recovery focused. So somebody 23 months in, I would see them entering the real world, but with the recovery tools to be able to navigate it without just relapsing. That's my thought.
Tami, you should write a book. I swear to God.
Get that no, book. I've seen what you've had to do. So
yeah, I thank you very much. So that's smart. So what I would expect at 23 months is that this person's helping other people. Yes. That would be the biggest sign to me that someone is getting better, that at somewhere around a year to 18 months, they've been around long enough to say, let me sponsor people. Let me come to the meeting and be the treasurer. Let me help with the books. When you start to hear, I think that the person you're involved with is actually not just racing to meetings and therapy and whatever, all of those things because they have to, but because it's become a part of their lives and they feel an obligation and a connection to those things. They would no less not go to a meeting than, not play with their kids on Saturday, whatever it is for them. So I think the integration of recovery into their lives, not as something I needed to go do because I was in trouble or I'm done at either, this is a lifelong process of personal growth and showing up for others in ways we haven't. And so it wouldn't just be, they were nicer to me. They were, weren't as irritable. They were more pleasant. They didn't seem to be staring at people for sex. I mean, to me, those are earlier goals, but by 2 years, I would want to see them giving back. And I think that would be the best sign that would tell me somebody's really on the road. And I see Tami going like this. So
yeah.
Likes that answer.
Well, and I'm also thinking, like I would see them going, and what do you need to support you? Like you've had a hard day with work. I'm going to take care of the kids, the family. I'm going to do what I'm going to be helpful in our household so that you have a break, which is not an addict thing to do. An addict is thinking like, oh, it's all about me and I'm going to take care of me. But with an addict in recovery, it'd be like, I see you've had a little stressful day. So, what do you need to take care of you? Do you need to go for a walk? Do you want to go read a book? Whatever it is, go talk to a friend, you would see them actively engaging in that way, I think, as well. That's been my experience. So, okay, next question. My SA and I are early in relationship and recovery. We have a healthy sex life that is important to me and have worked out boundaries that I hope will keep me safe and allow us to continue to make progress in our relationship. My question is, what generally is the relationship between relationship sex and sex addiction? In your experience, what do you see being hallmarks of partner sex that correlate to success in recovery, if any? Thank you. That's an interesting question.
It's a very interesting question because it's asked by a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it was asked by a sex addict, I would be curious again, why are they focused on sex when there's so many other pieces that they need to be working on? But that coming from a partner makes it a really interesting question.
Well, and that it's important to me. We have a healthy sex life and that's important to me. So.
Well, I appreciate, that part I really appreciate because partners tend to sort of give in and not ask for what they want. So I think the fact that you're just saying, this is what I want and it's important to me is a partner's recovery, just that piece. But I'm not sure I fully understand the question of what is the relationship between sex and sex addiction and what are their hallmarks of partner sex? To me, the hallmark of partner sex that tells me that someone is in recovery is their eyes are open. They're looking at you. You feel connected to them. It's about more than genitals and orgasms, but it's about a lot of ways in which we make each other feel physically good and sensual. So I don't think it's about if we have good sex or the right kind of sex or are having it frequently enough, then they won't act out. I definitely know that it's not about if you have good sex, then you can rely on us acting out. But if you have bad sex, you can't rely on us acting out. So I think it's more, and by the way, we don't have to have sex. I know that's a shocking idea, but there are couples who don't have sex and they're very happy. And there are couples who have sex all the time and aren't. So I don't think we can value the quality of our relationships by how often, frequently, or the quality of our sex lives. But if you value it and you want it and it's important to you, you should be able to feel. Nothing I say nothing I say can tell you, do you feel a heart connection? Do you feel that person looking in your eyes? Do you feel them? Do they get out of bed the minute you're done being sexual, or do they hold you? It's all those little things that tell me that they aren't a hallmark of recovery, but they're much more a hallmark that the two of you are connecting and growing meaning in your sex life. So, Tami, you have any thoughts of it? You like that question?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think my one thought that would be a little concerning is timing. Is it like when I'm stressed out, I'm looking for sex? You know, if your SA, because it's early in the process, if your SA is looking for sex, not to connect with you, but to escape and numb out, and you know, to get away from the reality of whatever is going on, that would be a little that would be a little concerning for me about recovery. So, you know, it's like everything else in recovery. What are we looking for it to do? Like I kind of threw out, you know, with Dr. Rob, you know, buying a car. Well, if I'm looking for a car to make me okay, that's the wrong reason to buy a car. If I'm looking for transportation, because, you know, whatever. So I always have to check my motives. And I guess a little bit of it with that is like, what is your SA looking to do? If it's just connecting with you, you know, having the experience, great. If it's, you know, if it's not, and then he, you know, I talked to somebody earlier today, and then he goes and watches porn as soon as he gets done having sex, that would be problematic. That, you know, so I think look at it holistically, but I'm glad you're here. Hopefully your SA is too. Okay. So next question. I am in recovery from sex and love addiction. I have just started dating. Oh, this is like these dating questions. I'm so glad you started dating. It's challenging. And I've been in relationship for a little bit over a month. I have written down my bottom lines, top lines, and inner circle behaviors, as well as set boundaries about how to behave in a healthy way around my partner. This has been a healthy relationship thus far. We are doing healthy things such as going on dates, exercising together, and have had lots of conversations to get to know one another. We have only made out up until this point. I have never had a successful relationship in my life. I'm so excited. My question is, when do you know when is the right time to introduce sex into a relationship will be? The reason I ask is because my past experience, once I started having sex, I become really needy and sex takes over the relationship. How do I maintain a healthy relationship with intimacy after having sex? So that's
Tell me,
great. I'm so excited.
you start with that one.
Okay, because like Dr. Rob has talked a lot about this, like having a posse, and you know, I feel like I have to tell your story because you talked about like calling your sponsor before, calling your sponsor after, but like it sounds like you have done so much work. I'm so happy to see. I've got bottom lines. I've got all this plan. You're taking it slowly. You're creating a real relationship. So, so are you going to get it perfect? Probably not. Who is? But gosh, if you've got the plan behind you, you've got your sponsor behind you, you've got, you know, Dr. Rob has talked about having a dating posse, you know, having the people in our lives to talk to about things, you're more likely to do it more right. So that's my thought. But gosh, I love that you're approaching this completely differently. And you're also aware, like, you know, I tend to get needy. Well, you can kind of go like, you know, I think I'm feeling a little, like, you're going to know, you're going to go, oh, I think I'm being a little needy, you know? And what does that mean? So then the other thing I mentioned earlier tonight, Troy Love talks about like abandonment wounds and those type of things. It might be you identify something that's going, oh, that's from this place, and that's, you know, but I'm not that person. So I think you can get information. So it's Finding Peace by Troy Love. He does the Friday men's group. He does a great job. That may be a useful tool in helping you navigate this as well.
Well, I think this is a woman.
Oh, you do?
So just,
interesting.
oh yeah. Just it's
that.
Emotionally insightful in a way that I don't think a man would show.
Well, there you go.
In my experience. Because this email cares about things that I don't think men necessarily pay attention to. But I love the fact that it might be a man, I don't know. If it is, a very sensitive and thoughtful man, in my opinion. I like that this person says we're doing healthy things, going on dates, exercising together, conversations, because this is exactly what Tam and I were talking about in terms of building intimacy. I don't care if you're married for 33 years or you just met, going on dates, exercising together, conversations to get to know each other. That's what couples need to do in recovery. I don't care how long they've been together. This is how you recapture intimacy that leads to sex, is by knowing each other and being vulnerable with each other and all that stuff. So I just wanted to point that out. Meanwhile, I don't think there's a right time to reintroduce sex, because it's not like you check these boxes and then you say, okay, time for sex. What I do think is it has to do with your communication. You know, one of the things I wrote down is, are you talking about sex? It says you're doing a lot of communicating. Are you talking about this? When would it be the right time for us to have sex? What does sex mean? Does it mean genital intercourse, or does sex mean, masturbating each other? I mean, there are a lot of ways to have sex. What does that actually mean? Are you talking about what kind of sex they like, what kind of sex you like? One of the things that I really think couples that I work with struggle with is it may be that these people have had so much sex, but they don't actually talk about it. It's like we're used to having sex and not being ourselves. Being ourselves with someone we care about and being sexual is a whole different ballgame. So, by the way, you won't do this perfectly, and you might get triggered by into wanting to be sexual with more people or in more ways. As I thought Tami said that great. That's the point of a sponsor or a therapist, is to be able to say, hey, I want to have sex 5 times today because I had sex once last week. What do I do? And then it's, people support. This is someone asked earlier, why have a sponsor? This is why, because you can have that person to call and say, gee, do you think it's a healthy thing for me to be acting on this or not acting on this or whatever that is? Someone asked earlier, and I wrote this down. I just wanted to say it, Tami. They said, or maybe it was here. Oh, it is here. Once I start having sex, I become really needy. So I think that being needful is a very good thing. And I think needing love and needing to be valued and needing to be appreciated and needing to feel special and needing to feel desired are all really good things. It's just who you choose to ask to meet your needs and how you ask to get them met is a very different thing. And it sounds like what you're saying is, once I start having sex, then I become needy, and that's bad because sex takes over. And I think if you're communicating, a little sex might lead to, the more people, I want to say it this way, the more sex people have, generally, the more they want to have. And so if getting closer to someone, having more sex leads to being more sexual more frequently, that sounds healthy to me. Maybe sex does take over for a little while. What matters is that you're talking about it. You're not keeping secrets about it. If you're having sex and you start thinking about all kinds of other people and situations, you can stop and say to your partner, I'm feeling a little checked out at the moment. Could we reconnect and return to sex? You don't have to tell them you were thinking about someone else. You can just say, I need to reconnect you. In other words, just because you've started doesn't mean you can't stop. Just because you have avoided it doesn't mean that you have to jump in. There is no right or wrong about this, but what this person is doing, and I love it, Tami, and you said so too, is they're talking about it and they're asking the right questions. I just want to know you asking all these questions of your partner.
So the next question kind of ties in. Dr. Rob, I've been in recovery from love addiction and single going on 3 years. When I eventually begin a relationship, is disclosure of a history of my love addiction important or necessary? This is love addiction. What about other addictions? Is it important for someone to fully disclose to a new partner?
Well, I love this question because, I've had people who said, we went on a first date and I let them know all about my sex addiction and where I used to go and all of the hookers I used to hang out with. And, because I wanted them to know, fairly quickly and upfront. And I thought, what a nightmare. Like, why would that person ever go out with you again? They know nothing about you. Or I've heard people say on dates, oh, well, I told them about my horrible childhood and how many years I've spent in therapy. And it's like, you got to get to know somebody first. So I want to say to you guys what intimacy is and how intimacy is achieved and how you find someone to be intimate with. Because for me, this is the essence of the work we have to do, is that when you disclose to someone pieces of yourself, 1 or 2 things happen. Well, 3. 1, if I say to you, I had something simple, I had a really bad day. My dog is sick and I had to run to the vet this afternoon. Just something like that. Yeah, I'm not going to tell that to a stranger, but if I said to Tami, that dog got sick and I had spent half the day getting him well, Tami, that would actually be revealing myself to Tami. It seems minor, but I'm saying this is how I'm feeling and this is how my day went. Now, she could do a couple of things. 1, she could move toward me and say, wow, I'm really sorry that happened. It's really difficult when your dog gets sick. It happens to me too. Meaning she heard what I said and it motivated her to get closer to me. That is intimate. I could reveal this to her and she could say, well, that's okay. Let me tell you about my day. And that would not be intimate. It would tell me about something about Tami, which is she is so, moving along with what's going on with her, that she is not that interested in what's going on with me. And if that happens enough, I know that that person's not available to be intimate with me. And then there's the just, we don't talk about anything. They just say, oh, well, sorry that happened, and we move on. So when you're starting to date, this is how you know if you're dating the right person. You are a little bit intimate with them. Like, that reminds me when I was growing up and my mom was angry a lot. That, and then see what they do. If they say, wow, I'm sorry you had an angry mom, or my mom was angry too, or then they're safe to, you've been intimate and they're moving towards you. Anything else is maybe not the person to be with if you keep practicing that. And sex is just another form of intimacy. I hold your hand, I reach out to you, I kiss you, I caress you. I feel responded to. Okay, and in a healthy way. Great, I want to move forward. You push my hand away. You start looking at porn. It tells me a whole different message. So the whole purpose of what we encourage people, what we want to move toward here, is people revealing themselves in little ways and slowly over time, bigger ways, in order to get what we all want in life, which is to have that neediness filled up with loving, supportive relationships. Part of the problem, by the way, with being a love addict is that we're not that interested in who they are. We're just so interested in the fact that they will love us and adore us and fill up all the emptiness inside of us. And in those cases, we'll do whatever we can to make sure they are feeling sorry for us, wanting to rescue us and pay attention to us. So I think little bits at a time. And as Tami said, also reporting to other people. I shared this. We talked about this. I opened up about this, all of that. I think, again, not being all alone with your own brain is a good idea.
And to tag on to what you're saying and get your sponsor or your posse's feedback. I shared this and this was their reaction, because I could completely miss that they were like, oh, that's really interesting, completely pulling away, and changing the subject, where, if I said, yeah, they pull back and, kind of change the subject, my sponsor might be going, that might be a sign that that person isn't willing to go to the next layer with you. So paying attention to body language, words, and using your posse for support is how we can navigate this differently. So, but you know what, after 3 years, I want to say after 3 years, I'm going to be a little Nike, just do it. Like, you get a posse and start, because 3 years.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're dating, but it doesn't mean they found a relationship. And I only want to say that because I dated for 9 years before I found a meaningful partnership. So if they're single and they're going on 3 years of dating, that's great, because it doesn't, and I don't know which one, Tami, to be honest.
You're right.
But if it takes a while to find a partner, that's the way it is.
Yeah, totally agree. I was reading it as I haven't been dating or doing anything. So, and you're right, it doesn't say that.
I wanted to go to the last sentence here. Is it important to fully disclose to a new partner? Absolutely, at some point. Once a relationship gets serious or meaningful, at least, let's say 5 or 6 months in, or even a little bit less, maybe 30 days in. Sorry, let me try again. I think around 90 days in, when a relationship starts to get serious, I would feel uncomfortable as someone who was dating you if I found out something really big after a couple of months. And I know too many spouses, some of you were on here, who married those of us who didn't tell you really important things about our sexual life. And you're sitting here 15 years later saying, I'm not sure I would have married you if I'd known that, or at least I should have had the decency to be told that before we got married. So somewhere between 90 days and making a commitment, you need to tell them they're human beings. Your partners have the right to say, I'm not sure I want to be involved in that. So to even say it's important to fully disclose, if to not fully disclose to a meaningful partner is to not be intimate with them, but to also cut them out as adults who make reasonable decisions about their own lives. Maybe they don't want to be involved with a sex addict. That's up to them. We have to tell them.
And hey, Tami, disclosing to them is different than a disclosure. So, like, be clear on that. Disclosing, your past in a way, it isn't like, and then I had, sex in our bed or whatever, so it's very different than a disclosure, a therapeutic disclosure between partners. So I think
I'm going to go eat my my holiday dinner.
Can we just do one? Because you came 5 minutes late. You give me one more question, okay? From a berated spouse. That's what it says, berated. So that's why we have to do this. Not betrayed, berated.
Yeah, I got
spouse. What is the connection between sex addiction and unprotected sex? I've contracted 3 STDs within 5 years, and I would think he would use protection to hide his infidelity.
Well, berated means beaten up, abused, mostly verbal, humiliated, embarrassed. So, and by someone else. Like if I said to Tami, you never do good work and I'm tired of working with you. And, every time and every day I remind her, that's berating someone. So I'm not sure exactly what that means. Maybe you're saying you feel abused by the fact that this person is not protecting you. So here's my first and only response to this. I would dump this person and never speak to them again. I would change the locks. Someone has given you, God, when I think about giving a person an STD one time, I think I would be embarrassed, humiliated, and also just really wishing that I hadn't harmed another person thoughtlessly. But to put you in a situation, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And by the way, STDs, HPV in a man could be a wart, in a woman, it could be cancer. So I just think, what is it, Tami? Once fool somebody, twice fool. What is that?
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to put shame on a betrayed partner, but like, yeah, like even you would think he'd use protection to hide his infidelity. It almost seems like the infidelity isn't okay. That's where I want to go to, is the infidelity isn't okay. And to just go, well, just use a condom, like that's he's still betraying you and having sex with you. So, Dr. Rob has often shared, why would you want to have sex with somebody you don't trust? And he clearly isn't trustworthy when this keeps happening. So that's sad.
And the question, what is the connection between sex addiction and unprotected sex? The connection is that when we're actively acting out our addictions, we're not thinking about safety. Or do you know how many men I work at Seeking Integrity who went out during COVID? Everyone was protecting everything, but they went out to see affair partners and sex workers and then came home to mom, dad, and grandma. This is typical. Sex addicts are not thinking, all addicts are not thinking of much else than ourselves when we're actively acting out. So to me, an STD has to do with the fact that this person's a very active addict and they're not thinking about the consequences. You can translate all of this, by the way, if you just use alcohol. This woman has picked up my kids drunk 3 times, and I think they wouldn't drink when they drive with my kids. And another way of looking at this in terms of getting an STD, how I read this is this person has beaten me up 2 or 3 times, and I've ended up having to go to the police. That's the level at which you're talking about being harmed. What's the difference between being smacked across the face and giving an STD, except one of them is inside your body? So yeah, this person's incredibly abusive and unaware of your basic health needs, no less being kind. And I just have a hard time thinking about being with someone like this. Thank you, Tami, for giving us time for that extra question.
And for those of you that did not get your questions answered, please come back. We'll be back again next week, Monday night, but there's lots more. I mentioned earlier the Wednesday morning series. We've got Dr. David Wednesday night. So there's lots. So thanks very much. Thanks, Dr. Rob.
See you guys at SI tomorrow. Bye.